Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Today's video is going to be the mid-year book freakout tag. Yeah, that's right. Let's hope this goes well because I did look at the questions before this, but I didn't literally plan out every single book that I wanted to talk about. Hopefully I don't completely butcher this. I do know that Sarah J Maas is going to come up a lot, so there is your warning. I'm going to try to not answer with a Sarah J Maas book for every question, but I completely fell in love with her this year. Her books are my favorite, but I do have some other really good books thrown in there. So let's just go ahead and get started. Question number 1 is best book you've read so far in 2021, and without a doubt, that is already starting off great. Okay. House of Earth and Blood, the first Crescent City novel by Sarah J Maas. First of all, this cover alone is amazing. That is a question coming up, so I'm not going to use this one for that answer. This is Sarah J Maas's first adult novel. It is about a half human, half fae named Bryce. And very tragically at the beginning, her circle of friends are murdered within her apartment. She comes home late and finds them all, and then it jumps to 2 years later, and she is struggling with grief, depression, trauma, and it's really sad to see, but she is approached to investigate those murders. She is helped by an angel named Hunt, and throughout this story, they're just building a friendship and trying to figure out what happened. Bryce is slowly letting him in. She has pushed herself away from everyone and everything, and you're really attached to her and really want things to go her way. It's really hard to read her story and not feel for her. I love her character so much. She is not liked by a lot of people in this book, and you literally feel every kind of emotion while you're reading it. This book makes you sad. It makes you really angry. I cried throughout the whole thing. There are a lot of side characters that I absolutely love. I cannot wait for the next one, which comes out in January. It will rip your heart into shreds, and then you'll be happy it did by the end, which just makes no sense. So I love this one. Question number 2 is best sequel you've read so far in 2021. Knowing that I've read a lot of Sarah J Maas this year, I feel like this answer is going to be a no-brainer, but that is A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J Maas. If you've read A Court of Thorns and Roses, the whole series, then obviously you know why this is the best sequel of the year. If you haven't read that series at all, then you really need to read A Court of Thorns and Roses, and then as soon as you finish that, you need to read the second one, because let me tell you what, you do not expect what happens in this book to happen. And obviously, I can't tell you anything about this one because it is a sequel. I will go ahead and tell you just a little bit about A Court of Thorns and Roses. This is one of the most popular series ever on Stinkin' BookTube. This is a Beauty and the Beast retelling. It's about a girl named Feyre who is taking care of her starving family. And while she is out hunting one day, she believes she's killing a wolf, and really she kills a fae. She is captured by Tamlin, who is the High Lord of the Spring Court, and she is forced to live with him. It's a Beauty and the Beast retelling, so you kind of know how that story goes, but this is a fantasy romance. I will say that the first book, I only gave 4 stars. I really, really liked it, but it is not as good as the rest of the series. The rest of the series, 5 stars all the way. Absolutely love them, especially starting with A Court of Mist and Fury. So if you read the first one and it's not your favorite, at least read the second one, because I'm telling you, you'll be like, what the heck just happened? This is the best thing I've ever read, and then you'll keep on. Question number 3 is a new release you haven't read yet but want to. So the 2 books that I am excited to read that are new releases are The Maidens by Alex Michaelides and Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. The Maidens is a book that takes place on a college campus. It's a thriller that involves Greek mythology, and I believe it's a professor is suspected of murder. It also involves a secret society of female students called the Maidens, which is where the title comes from. So I'm assuming that they are involved in either trying to solve the murder or they're the ones being murdered. I honestly don't really know. I don't want to know too much about this because it is a thriller, so we'll just leave it at that. It says, a spellbinding tale of psychological suspense weaving together Greek mythology, murder, and obsession. This is the author of The Silent Patient, which everybody raves about. I have not read that yet, but I was really, really excited to get my hands on The Maidens. This is also another beautiful cover. The other new release that I'm really excited about is Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. If you're new to BookTube, you'll want to know that this is a very popular author. She also wrote The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo and Daisy Jones and the Six. This is about 4 famous siblings that throw an epic party every year, and on this specific year, crazy crap is going to happen, and within those 24 hours their lives are going to be changed forever. It just seems like a really fun summer read. It just came out. I'm really excited. It'll be my first book from her, and so hopefully I really like it. Number 4 is your most anticipated release for the second half of the year. And for whatever reason, at first I was like really struggling to answer this question. I was like, what books are coming out? I am newer to like paying attention to new books. So at first I was like, do I really just not know any? And then it finally dawned on me that like, duh. The obvious answer for this is A Shadow in the Ember. No, is that right? I can't even look at my phone now. Oh my God. Yeah. A Shadow in the Ember by Jennifer L. Armentrout. It is the first novel in the companion prequel series to From Blood and Ash, and it is following Nyktos and his consort. I honestly don't know if it's pronounced that way. I think I've heard Jennifer L. Armentrout say Nyktos, but I like to say Nyktos because it makes me think of Niklaus from The Vampire Diaries and the originals. You need to watch that if you haven't. But I am really excited to read that. I'm obsessed with the From Blood and Ash series, which will come up later in this video. So I'm really, really excited about that book. Hopefully by now I've put a picture of A Shadow in the Ember here. It comes out in October. I have not pre-ordered it yet, but I will be getting onto that soon because I will have that as soon as it's out. Number 5 is biggest disappointment of the year. I did mention this in a previous video, but oh my God. In my recent reads video, I talk about Fable. I dog it pretty good. But basically, I just don't understand. I don't understand the hype around this book. Nothing happens for the majority of it. I think the exact page I'm pretty sure is 189. It's chapter 23 where something finally starts happening. And you kind of get sucked in a little bit right at the end. But then it's over and then you have to read Namesake. And so I'm still trying to decide whether or not I actually want to read it or just be done, because I wanted to DNF this book the whole time. Like, it's so boring. Not a lot happens. There's a sudden romance with no buildup. It's just, I don't understand why this book is so hyped, aside from the beautiful cover, because this is a gorgeous cover. And even though I only rated this book 2 stars, I'm going to keep it just because I think the cover is beautiful. But I don't know. I really don't think that this book is good at all, which has me really worried about reading anything else by Adrienne Young. So maybe I'll eventually pick up Namesake. I know it's definitely not at the top of my list because I rated this 2 stars and just really didn't like it. So please let me know down below how you felt about Fable, because I kind of feel crazy knowing that everybody's loving this book. I wanted to love it, but I was so bored. Question number 6 is biggest surprise of the year. And I knew instantly what I wanted to pick for this. There's no question about it. That is 100% Tower of Dawn by Sarah J. Maas. This is book 7, I think, of 8 in the Throne of Glass series. I'll go ahead and say that I did not want to read this book. I was loving that series, but when I knew that this book was coming, I was like, God, I kind of want to skip it. It takes place at the same time as Empire of Storms. You read Empire of Storms first, and then you're supposed to read Tower of Dawn. And for whatever reason, I just had no interest in reading it. I am one of the people that actually has loved Chaol, however the heck you say his name. I loved him the whole series. There are times in some of the books where I get so pissed off at him, like I wanted to scream. But overall, I love his character. But regardless of the fact that I actually did really like him, I was amazed at how good this book is. It's actually my second favorite in the whole series. It's second to Heir of Fire, which, fight me, it is the best book in that series. But this was so good. I still, to this day, will randomly think about some of the scenes that take place in this book. Sartik and Nesrin, one of my favorite couples in the whole series. It makes me really sad that this part of the world is only in this book because I think it is so good. I cannot believe how much I absolutely love this. So anytime I see where people are like, nope, didn't read it, I skipped it, or they're thinking about skipping it, I chime in with, do not skip this book. There's things that are only in this book that you have to know for the last one, Kingdom of Ash. So I don't understand, like, are you confused reading Kingdom of Ash if you didn't read this book? Because you should be, because you missed a whole bunch. But if you don't like Chaol, whatever, read this anyway. It's not just his story. There's him, Yrene, Nesrin, Sartik, other people. Don't know if I'm saying any of their names right, but this book is so good. Definitely my second favorite in the series. And there are certain scenes that I could still cry about. They are so dang good. There was one day I was just driving down the road and I randomly thought about a Sartik and Nesrin scene and was just bawling my eyes out. I really did almost skip this book. So glad I didn't. It's amazing. I love it. Please read it. Question number 7 is favorite new author. This is without a doubt Jennifer L. Armentrout. Her From Blood and Ash series is huge. It's all the rage, and I stinking love it. I've read all 3 books that she has out so far this year. The other 2 are right here. Let me just get them. So number 1 is From Blood and Ash. Number 2 is A Kingdom of Flesh and Fire. And number 3 is the one that just came out, The Crown of Gilded Bones. I love these books. They are about Poppy, who is a maiden, and she is destined to ascend to help save her people, I guess you would say. She lives a terrible life. Nobody is allowed to talk to her. Nobody is allowed to touch her. She is not allowed any fun or pleasure. And one day she ends up having to get a new guard. His name is Hawk. He's smoking hot, and he makes her question everything. Covers are beautiful. I now want to literally read every single thing that she's ever written. I already have the first book in the Dark Element series on my Kindle waiting, which is White Hot Kiss. But I am ready to devour everything that she has written. Number 8 is Newest Fictional Crush. Oh my God. Cassian. I want to freaking eat him. I want to have him. Ugh, I just love him. I love him. I love him. I love him. Why am I not Nesta? I want to be her so I can have him. This is the newest book in the ACOTAR series, A Court of Thorns and Roses. And this follows Nesta and Cassian's story. And I freaking love Cassian. I really have liked him throughout the whole series because he's like the goofy guy. If you knew me at all, that's what makes sense. My husband is a really goofy guy. This is the steamiest book that Sarah J. Maas has written so far. I stinking loved it. It's one of my favorite books that she's come out with. It's the first officially labeled adult book in the A Court of Thorns and Roses series, I think. Hopefully. A lot of people were worried about this book because Nesta is a very hated character. Her relationship with Cassian is top tier. It is so amazing. And he's so hot, man. I want him. I want to have him. Number 10 is Book That Made You Cry. And I have 2 answers for this one. The first one I'm just going to say quickly because I've already mentioned it. And that is House of Earth and Blood. Like I've already said, I cried so many times in this book. It is so heartbreaking, but in the best way. You cannot pass up on this book. If you've already read it, you freaking know. I was just dying reading this book. And when you finally have a happy moment, you're like, thank God. And then the other book, sorry, but it is another book by Sarah J. Maas, and that is Kingdom of Ash. Dude, if you've read this series, you know what scene made me cry. Because if you didn't cry, man, I don't know if we can be friends. Because it was heartbreaking. If you haven't read this yet, you need to be reading this series because you need to know why this book makes you cry at the end. I can't say why because this is the last book in the series. But basically, the series starts with Throne of Glass and it's about Celaena Sardothien, or Sardothien, however you say her name. I don't know how to say any of these names. But she is an assassin and In the first book, she has to compete against a bunch of other assassins to try to become the king's champion, so one day she can be free because she's technically a slave right now. And Kingdom of Ashes is the last book in the series, and when you get there, you know, it's a fantasy book. So by then there's war and stuff going on, and when there's war, people die. Some of the people that die, it'll break your heart. It just will. That's all I can say. I can't believe she did that. Makes me want to slap her. But I won't slap her because I want her to write more. Number 11 is a book that made you happy. Aside from the new releases, this would be like the only other book that's not fantasy. And that is The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. This is a romance about the sister of a bride and either brother or best friend of the groom. And they end up having to go on a honeymoon together because the bride and groom got food poisoning and they couldn't go on the trip. It was an all-inclusive trip, and if they didn't take it at that time, like, they lost it. That was it. So the two people that go, they actually hate each other. Like, they haven't been able to see each other for years. And not only do they have to go on this trip together, but they have to act like they are the married couple because the company that gave them this giveaway trip was like, if we find out that this is fraud in any way, the trip's canceled. So they literally have to go acting like they are married or newlyweds. I laughed out loud, like, for real, so many times, and it's perfect for summer. I mean, it's about them going to a beach. A lot of people say that it's as good as The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. So if you've read that one, I do agree with that. You should definitely give this a go. I really liked this, and I wanted to make sure that I included something that wasn't fantasy. This is actually the only book I've read by Christina Lauren, but because of this one, I plan to read a lot more soon. Number 12 is Most Beautiful Book That You've Bought Yourself This Year. And this one was really hard because I think that so many of my books are really pretty. But I did pick two that I want to talk about. The first one is The Maidens. I have already talked about this one, but for whatever reason, I really do just love this cover. I think it is so beautiful. I love the statue. I love, like, the cracking, whatever that's supposed to be. I even think that the spine is really pretty. Well, definitely one of my favorites from this year. And then the other one is Fortuna Sworn by KJ Sutton. I think that this is beautiful. Like, this is probably my favorite cover ever. And if you look up this series, you will see that all of the covers are stinking stunning. I haven't read this at all yet. I honestly don't know too much about it. I have mentioned it in a previous video, but when I looked back on it, I kind of feel like I butchered it. All I know is that Fortuna is not human, but she is living amongst humans. And at some point, her brother has gone missing, and she meets a man who says that he will help her find him. She has to, like, make a bargain with this man, and I believe it's enemies to lovers romance. Everyone who I've seen has read this has absolutely loved it. There are some trigger warnings. It says, please be aware this novel contains scenes or themes of sexual harassment and toxic relationship and slavery. Really want to be careful of that before you read this book. The cover is so beautiful. I cannot wait to read this, and I plan to very soon. And then the last question is, what books do you need to read by the end of this year? I actually have so many books that I need to read. I just started reading again after a few years off. When I started back reading in November 2020, that's when I started, like, watching so much BookTube and getting acquainted with so many books that I want to read, that my TBR list is massive. Most of the books that I have behind me, I haven't even read. I've definitely read the ones up here and some of the ones here. I only read like maybe 10 books last year, but this year I'm already at 29, so I'm really getting back into the swing of reading a lot. I'm actually going to make a video dedicated just to the books that I want to try to read by the end of this year. But to have an answer for this question, I'm going to say that the Shadow and Bone trilogy, I've read nothing from the Grishaverse, and I really want to read Shadow and Bone. Six of Crows as well, because I want to watch the show. The show looks amazing, but I refuse to watch it until I've read the books. So that is a top priority for me. I don't even own the books yet, but as soon as I get them, I plan to read them. If you're interested in seeing what all the books are that I'm hoping to read by the end of the year, there will be a video coming soon. That is all the questions for my mid-year book freakout tag. If there's anything you think I'd really like based on the books that I talked about, please let me know. I hope you like this video. Like and subscribe if you wanna, and I'll see you next time. Bye.